Even though it's, about a year away, the 2015 year, I think, will be all about campaigning as we head into, of course, an election at the federal level. Already, the pundits are predicting a minority government on either side. So it could be the Liberals win, but it's a minority, or Stephen Harper wins, it's a minority. The name we're not hearing a lot of, Thomas Mulcair. So it doesn't even matter, apparently, that we have a third party. Let's bring in Matt Gurney to talk about this and all things politics of what we can expect, I think, in 2015. I was reading with interest in the Post, Andrew Coyne. I mean, he's one of the big talkers on this kind of thing, but already he's saying either which way we go when it comes to the next election, it's going to be a minority. And I'm not sure how we make that kind of prediction when we don't even know what Trudeau is going to be rolling out.
I don't even predict election results a week in advance. I think a year is ambitious. I mean, look, Andrew was right when he wrote that column that if we went with what the polls are saying today, and you factor in the fact that campaigns matter and there's always some up and down, we probably would either have a Liberal minority or a Conservative minority. We don't really know which one it would be. The polls have been neck and neck for most of December.
Had you asked this 2 months ago, the pundits were saying Stephen Harper's not even a factor because the polls were so, you had Trudeau 9 points, 11 points, and not just for a month, but there was a trend, like 13, 14 months, he was the guy to beat.
The question was about that, was not whether or not Trudeau would win, and I don't even think a lot of people were saying how big a minority he'd have. It was, will he get a majority? Probably how big a majority? I mean, people were talking, honestly, about a Conservative collapse. I mean, they were basically talking about the Conservatives being reduced to Alberta, a handful of seats in Greater Toronto. It was interesting. I didn't think it would ever be that bad, but then, Mr. Harper had a great fall right up and through, kind of up to the holiday season when it began. The Conservatives were looking pretty good. They were having a good run out there. So,
well, they tightened up the polls to within 1 point, and so now we've actually got a real horse race. And so the question is, and I think, I don't know how we can call which is going to happen, because the bottom line is, well, some say that Harper will still step aside and disappear and someone else will come in. I don't think that's going to happen. We've not seen Justin Trudeau really perform under true scrutiny. We've been very, tough on him here at Sun News, trying to, we've seen his gaffes, we've seen what he's like when he's not on script. He's had some pretty tough moments. When he is under the real scrutiny of actual election coverage and when he's being truly scrutinized by folks like yourself, I think he's going to have a harder time.
We'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, because he does, as we know, and even he would acknowledge himself. He says, I say dumb things sometimes. I mean, he has himself acknowledged, I get ahead of myself. My mouth can get ahead of my brain sometimes. Obviously, this is what the Liberals are working on. It was interesting about a year ago when the slogan they came out with was getting ready to lead. And it was, they
weren't lying.
Yeah. And I actually thought it was kind of clever, because there were probably some of us out there who went, well, okay, at least they're being honest about it. But the question I have is, and I don't know, and we're not going to know until the election period actually begins, how has it gone for him? He hasn't had as many gaffes lately. I mean, I think he's made political errors.
He made as many gaffes as he was going to make, and then they shut him up because they haven't been marching him out nearly as much. I mean, at one point, I think they said, all right, enough. We can't have any more gaffes, because now they are starting to be scrutinized, because for the most part, nothing is said about it. But I think 2015 would be different, I would hope.
Eventually it'll have to be, because even before the election period begins, the Liberals will probably or presumably bring out an actual platform. Mr. Trudeau will then go coast to coast to coast. He'll go all over the country. He'll go to small towns and hockey rinks and church basements, and he'll try to sell the policy. Yeah, he'll do it. Like, he'll really ramp it up, and it'll be kind of election campaign style even before the campaign begins. Conservatives are already doing this. The Prime Minister's been popping up all over the country, especially in the Greater Toronto area where he needs to build up his support. He's doing campaign style events already. Mr. Trudeau will start that soon. I'm curious to see. I want to know if basically this kind of boot camp for political leadership he's been going through, has it paid off? I think it'll help. I think he'll do better than he has before. Will he do well enough to be trapped between someone who's like Mr. Harper, an experienced, effective, ruthless politician, and a very good debater?
Yeah.
And also, I mean, you were saying just a couple minutes ago, the NDP are kind of in the middle of nowhere right now. I agree with that. The NDP is dying as a force, but Thomas Mulcair is still really effective.
He still dominates question period. Yeah. And when it comes time to those debates, and I think the debates is when actual people will watch.
Yes.
I mean, that will be, for Mr. Trudeau, the toughest night of his life. And he may do better than we think, but the bottom line is, it will be tough for him to go up against Harper and Mulcair.
I think he will do better than we think, especially for people who've been watching for
Well,
a
I
long
think we've
time.
set the bar, though, very low. And
that's the question.
that to me is not enough to have a prime minister. You either can do the job or not. We've seen through Australia terror, Canada terror, we've got all these big foreign policy situations unfolding. Russia, we don't know where that, I mean, there are some really serious issues. And then we've got the economy, with falling gas prices.
Yep.
We're in for some turbulent times, and whoever takes this country in its hands is going to have a big job.
Yeah,
It's not enough to be good looking and to be, famous last name. You have to come to the table with something.
I think he'll overperform in the debates and in the campaign. I don't know if he'll reach a level that Canadians will be comfortable with. However, though, never underestimate the voters' ability to surprise you. I mean,
Trust me, we saw that in the provincial election in Ontario.
There you go.
Here's my question to you then. Kathleen Wynne, I think, is in for a real bumpy ride in 2015. Look, the shine is off. I don't know who voted for her. I can't find anyone who will actually admit it anymore. But she's going to shill for Mr. Trudeau big time in any kind of election. And she's, now becoming known as, whiny Wynne.
Yeah.
There's never enough money in it. She can't get a meeting with the prime minister. And, is this going to, if the economy's not improving in Ontario, and from all the analysts that I've read, it's not expected to, they haven't put any plan forward, is this going to become problematic in a huge vote-rich area like Ontario?
Maybe for the federal Liberals.
That's
but
what I'm
I
saying.
mean, the problem is, of course, that even if Kathleen Wynne becomes the least popular person in Canada and just becomes a total catastrophe as a prime minister, some would say she is already, but let's say it gets worse. She's got 4 years. I mean, she has her majority, right?
But
She's
does she
not going
hurt
anywhere.
Trudeau? I mean, would she be going out and campaigning for him? Will Ontario be so fatigued by her that they'll take it out at the federal level on Mr. Trudeau and say, we don't need more Liberals in charge? Because this is a big problem for us.
It does happen.
When we know that we're going into labor unrest in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. And one of the things people have often said about Ontario is that it tends to split its vote between federal and provincial. So it has a Liberal majority at Queen's Park. It's probably, as you say, it's already kind of unpopular. It's probably going to get worse because the economy's not getting better. The debt's getting bigger, hydro rates, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that are going to give this government a really rough ride over the next couple of months. Maybe that's going to convince some Ontarians who might be on the fence, you know what, I'm not wild about this Harper guy, but he's done an okay job on the economy right now. Things aren't so great at the provincial level. I don't like his tone, I don't like his style, but I trust him with my wallet, my pocketbook. That is not uncommon for Ontario to go that way, to go one way federally, one way provincially. I remember on election night in Ontario in June, I said to some of my colleagues, this is not a bad night for Stephen Harper. I mean, it's a terrible night for the Conservatives. It's not a great night for the province. But if you're a federal Conservative strategist, you can work with this.
I remember drinking heavily.
I don't remember.
Let me play a clip from the finance minister. Here's what he was saying yesterday. They got a lot of money given to them yesterday by the feds. Still not enough.
I'm pleased at the first step that the federal government has taken, recognizing and listening to our demands, our requests, recognizing that the monies that we're talking about are monies that Ontario has contributed. But we also want our fair share, and we appreciate that the federal government recognizes that as well.
Remember that scene out of Oliver Twist when he goes up, puts the bowl
The
out?
scene.
Scene. I get the sense that there's not a bowl big enough for this provincial government. They don't get it. They don't get it that they can't keep putting their hand up. They're not contributing anything.
No, well, that's the problem, right? I mean, every time Mr. Sousa, especially the finance minister, every time he gets up to make some comments about an economic statement or a budget, revenues are coming in lower than expected. And the problem is, I'm not going to give the Liberals credit here, but they've actually had some success restraining their spending in the last couple of years.
What?
Not a whole lot of success.
What? Name one.
Well, I mean, they have been able to basically, flatline some of the spending in the provincial budget. The union costs are going up.
By the scandals and the corruption
That's the problem. They've been trying to hold the line on program spending, but the thing that I think would terrify them the most is that the revenues aren't coming in, because their whole plan is basically, we're going to do our best to avoid political pain, we're going to try to hold the line. They're not being entirely successful, I know, but they're going to try to slow down. They're not going to do that 7% year-over-year increase that Dalton McGuinty used to do, and they're just waiting for the economy to grow and catch up with them. It's not growing. It's coming in below expectation every time. This is opening up holes in the Liberal budget that they don't have the means to fill, because they are basically, I mean, typical Ontario Liberals, unfortunately, as soon as some money comes in, they spend it on something. They commit it to something. So there's never any reserve and there's never any flex. So now we're looking at the Ontario pension plan. We have labor negotiations coming up. Hydro rates are still bad. The smart meters aren't working, and the economy isn't growing. So yeah, I mean, kind of the only hope they have left is that Ottawa starts writing big checks. Fun part of this too is, though, even if Trudeau does win in 2015,
what's fun about that?
well, he still has books to balance, right? Like he's not going to be able.
They balance themselves, Matt.
Well, eventually, of course.
They balance themselves.
You think he's going to come to Ontario with a big $5 billion check every year?
He
won't be able to.
That's what she's counting on. That's her ticket, her meal ticket.
This is why we're in trouble.
Yeah. All right, Matt, we got to leave it there. Thank you.
Take care.